Let's talk some toys in here.
Hey, what's up everybody? Today's man-child. Alright, so today I'm going to do a little review, or I guess product information update on figure stands, especially Kaiser stands. So I get this a lot with these particular stands, right? So I might put a review up of whatever, something from NECA, Masterverse, Spawn, Mcfarlane toys, stuff I collect. And somebody will say, yeah, I like the figure, cool review. What's that stand he's on? What's that thing? Where'd you get that? And they're referring to these stands. A lot of my older videos, I would mention these time to time. I'll go over the figure, and they'll come with one of these little, especially Mcfarlane, which these little cheesy stands, and they work for certain figures. I'll use them for my MOTU origins. They have their place, but for the most part, they're useless with a lot of the QC issues in the joints that I've experienced with my figures. Depending on the overall aesthetic of the figure, the weight, how it's balanced, all that good stuff. So for the most part, I'd say 90% of my figures I use these Kaiser stands with. Now they don't work for everything, obviously because of the figure's overall design, but for the most part, I think they're awesome. So here's a closer look at one up front if you're not familiar with them. I mean, yeah, not rocket science, right? Just another figure stand, but these are very unique, and a lot of people don't know about them or where to get them. I get them on eBay. I'm going to leave a link in the description. There's quite a few sellers that sell them. The link I'm leaving is just somebody I've been buying from years. I had a couple different people. I'm not affiliated with this person. I've never contacted them. I just know I pay for my stands and they ship quick and I get them in the mail. And I've literally bought hundreds of these over the years with my figures. So anyway, that's it. It's just a steel black plate. They do make them in white as well. And yeah, you can see just a round loop. It's got little plastic protective ends so it don't scratch your figure up. And that's it. Just slides in like that. And you can see the overall posture. Now, these you can bend open to adjust for certain waists in the figures. There is Kaiser stands that have larger loops that I have purchased from other sellers. This particular seller has a smaller loop one, so it's something you might want to watch out for. But these are the smaller loop ones because sometimes the big loop ones are too big, figure falls out. Now, what's cool with these is how flexible they are, as like I was saying, so you can bend them open and they'll, like that, or you can bend them up if you want to, bend them down a little bit, push them in. There's a couple different things you can do with them. Some figures now, so for example, these are rated for a 6 to 8 inch, 7 to 8 inch action figure. Certain 6-inch action figures will actually float off them, like the Master Universe Classic. So what you do is when you put the weight, put this loop around his waist, you just bend these forward a little bit. You can even bend this metal piece, and you can adjust so the legs land. Or obviously, you can go up and down, right, to lift the figure up or push it all the way down. So it's only going to go down about that far. It kind of needs that curve. I've tried straightening these out, but then it brings the figure too close to this base, and it doesn't work right. But for the most part, I think they're great. So let me bring in some different figures and show you how to set up. And before I get into that too, you can also see that when you purchase these, they come in sets of 6 or 12. So that's why I thought it'd be a good time to make this video, right? So I just got more in here where I've got a total of 6 stands. And generally they come like this. They come in, see, like with a band. Each one's individually wrapped with some piece of paper there so they don't get scratched. And these pieces will come individually also. You just take them all apart, you set them up like this. So bringing some figures in, I got my MOTU Classics, Terror Claws, Skeletor. Yeah, another figure, couldn't get him to stand, kept just falling at the knee, or it was the ankle. Plus he's heavy with the claws, or he'd fall backwards if you want to set him up with this weapon, dragon mouth weapon thing he always had. So yeah, it's a good example. Now, him particularly, he would float, but I was able to actually modify the stand and push it and bend it so the feet touch it goes claw, so the feet touch the base and never fall again. It's just perfect. So next up, I'm going to bring in the Mcfarlane Toys Omega Spawn. Pretty cool figure, loaded with QC issues. The waist was a mess. Everything was a mess. Couldn't stand. I heard a lot of complaints with this figure. Wasn't, large enough to be accurate to the comics, all that good stuff. I still think it's cool, but without a figure stand, it was no way he would stand. Every joint was just a mess in his figure. And I used joint fix. It didn't matter. But now I got a figure stand. He's standing, looks cool. But you can see same thing. I had to bend that one open a little more because it was very wide in the waist, and it still worked. It might be a little crooked, but overall, it wasn't for the Kaiser stand. This figure for me would never work. So I'm going to bring in a couple more popular figures. Right, we have this is the new Master Universe, Masterverse Ram Man, cool figure. And we have the NECA Gorilla Aliens. Now, I love NECA Aliens and Predators. I have most of them, but I've yet to have a NECA Alien that would stand. And NECA too, they don't even include stands with a lot of stuff. And if they do, it's they actually have clear stands. So once again, we're getting other stands. This video is about the Kaiser, but this is what you get. They got a hole, puts in the foot. I've yet fall forward. They're useless to me. You know, they don't even work for most of my figures. And then I back that Mcfarlane one. But like Ram Man, for example, he stood up okay, but you know, after I reviewed him, he would just fall a lot. Now I want to make an example of this. So here's another stand from eBay, a different seller, Kaiser, right? But look at the design on this. So the base plate's exactly the same as this new pack I just got in. There's nothing different, but see, this is a larger ring. So you have to look in the picture image when you buy these. I don't remember, again, this came from a different seller, different time. But as I said, from a few different sellers lately. It's been the one I'm showing these stands with now. But see this one, this stand's really cool, how wide it is. And even has little loops, this particular ring. You could put a piece of wire or rubber band or something if you wanted to wrap this around a figure's waist if it didn't work, which I haven't had, you know, have not done that yet. But Ram Man's a really wide waist, so something like this, smaller loop is not going to work unless you have to bend it like crazy, you know, and then you're going to damage it. You'll scratch the figure up. So you got to be careful of that. I mean, the other thing with these larger loop ones too is they don't have any protectors on it. Where these have a polished metal end or sometimes plastic. I think this one, oh, this one's polished, okay, metal round loops, where some are actually plastic pieces. I'm sorry. So I haven't really had them scratch a figure yet, but these I have, so you got to be careful of that. So bringing in that Gorilla Alien real quick, I mean, look at the, you know, the aliens, the xenomorphs are kind of like, they can run and crawl, they can stand upright. If you look at comics, the movies, and what the, you know, the inspiration for the toy was. Has a ton of articulation. NECA makes some of the best aliens I've seen, but they do have their fair share of QC issues, you know. And, you know, to be fair, everybody, including myself as collectors over the years, wants more and more articulation, and you're trying to put too many joints and things with, you know, just highly end sculpted figures and elbow joints and this, that, and you're just going to have problems. This is part of being a collector, and you got to have the tools, you know. I say this all the time, and figure stands, unfortunately, make your figure stand, right? And they're really going up in price. That's what's a shame. You think for the cost now, you get something like this, you never have a problem, but that's not the way it works. Anyway, I want to bring this alien for a second because sometimes certain xenomorphs, you have to like, see now this one I can grab in the middle and the tail can go behind it, but other larger ones, you got to kind of offset the stand so the tail goes on the side of it. You know, so once again, you got to modify a little bit. It's not perfect, but for the most part, here you go again. Because of this stand, he stands perfect, and I couldn't get him stand at all. So here's a look at a couple other popular figures. Of course, our MOTU Origins, which you all love. We got Tongue Lasher here. Another one, Origins too. They, you know, half of my figures stand, the other half don't. You know, they shift. It's always a problem with the Origins in the knees or the feet. It's awesome that they modernized these off the vintage. Have all articulation. I love it. But again, it just has it's cheaply made. Has its problems. I've used Joint Fix, which is a liquid. I've showed it on my channel a couple times. It does help, but to be safe, when you got a bunch of guys together in a big diorama, the last thing is you get one fall, it takes them out like dominoes. So the point with the Origins Tongue Lasher, or all the Origins, is that the Kaiser stand, getting back to these, will not work on these. Well, let me back that up. It can. You would have to snap it around the neck. I'll give you an example. So right now, see, I'm using a Mcfarlane figure stand. I want to bring these in just to make a point of these two. But if you want to use these Kaiser stands on Origins, depending on the figure and the design, so you put it on a neck, and it doesn't look too bad, but it does work perfect. So that is a way to use the Kaiser stand. But for the most part, to me, on the Origins, it's not the most practical stand to buy. So going back to these Mcfarlane stands, NECA too, and the old Mcfarlane used to make something similar to this. What's funny is some are marked Spawn, some are marked, they're not marked at all, or DC, depending on what it is. You can black paint it over. I just leave it. But what's funny is the pegs fit the pegs perfect in the Origins feet. See, so it helps hold a figure like Tongue Lasher up. But again, also with the Origins, not only did I have to use a figure stand on a figure like Tongue Lasher, I also had to use the liquid fix in the knees because, see, here's the problem. going back with these round stands or these big clear stands with NECA, McFarlane, Masterverse, once they start getting weak, okay, so he's in the feet or knees or sometimes the hips, doesn't matter if you have this figure in that peg with the foot, he's going to fall forward or side to the back. I've seen it hundreds of times over the years of collecting, you know. So once I put some liquid fix, I use a stand for the you know, these origins, and they seem to work okay. But I just wanted to show you an example of how the Kaiser stand would work with the origins over these little McFarlane foot stands. So for another figure I'm going to bring in, this is a 12-inch military model called, it was from a company called Dragon Models. These came out in the early 2000s. I mean, there's just, but when I was collecting these, Dragon Models was the big thing. Then Hot Toys come around, Sideshow. It's so beyond. I mean, I collected a lot of these. I got rid of a lot. I did save quite a few. There's so much out there now, you can't imagine the companies in detail compared to this. But for the time, and still to this day, detail's unbelievable. Anyway, all cloth clothes, vest, M4, you can range the, you know, your attachments. This guy was, I think, a modern Iraq soldier when they, you know, when they first start going into that conflict early on. He comes with an Alice pack, AT4. I mean, it's got the markings, the triggers. Another thing with these soldiers, too, though, they would not stand. All right, so it's basically a naked body, like a doll, underneath, or an action figure. It's highly articulated, and then, you know, this one came clothed. You can dress them up with boots on. You want to do all this stuff. But, yeah, it wouldn't stand. And I had probably a couple hundred of these. I had German, World War II, American, everything you could think of. Yeah, they wouldn't. You had to have one figure stand for long periods of time. Now, these two, this is another type of figure stand too. It's not a Kaiser. It's considered like a 12-inch figure stand. Has a thing here for a label. These basically pop apart. For the most part, these are garbage. Unless you modify them. I always put this piece in and glue it. It has the metal thing come up. And you can see this is a little different design for these type of figures. Because a round waist loop, which these do have, don't normally work for these because of all the equipment and stuff. You know, or just can't grab them right. So you have this piece, and it actually sits on the crotch, like that. The Mundo Master Universe has these, comes with something similar like this. But in my experience, too, if you don't, the problem with these is they, like once you set the figure, okay, these will fall, and the figure will rock and do a flip over. I've seen it with my Mundo. So it's, what I do is I put tape on these to try to hold this from sliding down. And these two have protectors, they always pop off. Now, if you notice with this one, too, they're garbage. You put these down, this whole thing busts apart. So I got to wind up taping this, gluing this. I don't like these, but unfortunately, these are not going to work, the Kaiser stands, the ones I have. They do make a 12-inch Kaiser stand. So this is for, like I said, there's 6 to 8-inch action figure, where this is particularly for 12. But the Kaiser stands, too, you would have to still have that, you know, this loop, which will work in the 12-inch Kaiser stand for these figures. So sliding him out of the way, moving on. Now here we go. This is a larger Kaiser stand. This is rated for 1/4-inch scale action figures. Look at the size of that one. Now I do have a 12-inch one somewhere around, so I can make an example with this guy. I don't know what I did with it. I have one of my figures somewhere. I haven't bought a lot because they're expensive. I always buy these smaller ones. And I do have a few of these. So look at the size of that. Heavy metal. I mean, this is very pricey for this. But got the big rings, you know. Same thing, going in and out. And I'm going to bring a figure and show you what it looks like on a 1/4-inch NECA Alien. Alright, so you can see my hand compared to this 1/4-inch scale, big chap, Xenomorph, the Alien from NECA. I mean, look at the size of that guy. I can't even get him in frame. I have to move the camera around, but compared to all my figures in the background. Another one, impossible to stand, would never stand out. Here's an example where I had to modify or think outside the box with the figure stand. It wasn't going to work clipping it on the back. I mean, it kind of, you know, somewhat, but because the tail gets in the way. So you can clip it to the side. And then sometimes, too, the figure will rock forward. So you just use like one of these little tie wraps or wire that comes with your action figures. And you can modify that. And sometimes, too, you have to do these with these smaller stands with aliens around the tail. So, you know, you got to modify a little bit to work. But for the most part, again, this figure would be impossible to stand without one of these. So I'm going to move on to some of my collection, sort of a little tour. I'm not getting the whole tour, but I just wanted to show you, like, how many of my figures has these Kaiser stands you can spot. You know, maybe not all of them, but for the most part. So these are a lot of my Masterverse. Like, every single one of them, I have a Kaiser stand. For the most part, it might be a few that don't, but you can kind of see because they would fall forward or not shift. Now, unless they were on, like, a Battle Cat or something. But once again, how great these stands are. So moving up to the next shelf, there's like the neck of the thing. Now you can obviously see most of those creature figures don't need the stands because of their overall aesthetics, but you can see Kurt Russell back there needs one with the flamethrower because he would just fall. Yeah, I got my Mcfarlane, another new spawn there. He needed a stand. Now that guy, that Centurion, he didn't need one, but you can see like this is an older Mcfarlane figure, 20 years ago. Another figure just without a stand, he couldn't stand. Yeah, my Storm Collectibles Mortal Kombat, every one of those guys needs a stand. Now you see even Raiden 2, I can make him float with that Kaiser stand there. Got Liu Kang on there. And then you see, these are some of the older McFarlane figures. They're pre-posed. They're on bases, and for the most part, they stand okay. And then there's another McFarlane figure that I was able to use a clear one, you know, at base and didn't need to stand. And there's some various, some of my NECA stuff, Aliens and Predator and a mix of things. Terminator, RoboCop. A lot of those too you can see, unless there's a dog, he didn't need one. You know, they need all those stands. They just did not work, or they would always fall forward. And some NECA, you know, Predators, because they were limited on articulation, the older stuff, which was interesting, you use them little clear stands, they were fine. As soon as you started adding all that modernized articulation, which is awesome, yeah, they just had a lot of issues with them. I'm just jumping over here too. So I got Conan Super 7. Yeah, every one of these figures, for the most part, has Kaiser stands. It's a custom Roboto there. Got some Filmation stuff, Club Grayskull. I think just about every one of them, side Modulock or the Hoverbots, come with their own stands, needed some type of Kaiser stand. And up here too, my NECA Space Marines, every one of them needed stands. So I'm jumping down over here. This was a mixture of NECA and Diamond Select Pacific Rim Jaegers. Same thing, just about every one of those needed some type of Kaiser stand because they would just fall forward. And then moving over here is various old McFarlane stuff. Yeah, mixture of everything NECA. You know, it's you can see what needs stands and what don't. So I'm just trying to just show you how these. Obviously, the Cygor didn't, and you know, yeah, the fire thing didn't. But that little Sam guy didn't until he was able to use a clear stand. The NECA Evil Dead guy, no way with them feet. Once I took him out of package, he definitely needed a stand. And jumping over here, there's a lot of my NECA aliens. So once again, I mean, I was able to use Kaiser stands on. You can see the Snake alien, the Mantis alien. Again, I had to shift it and modify how to figure, put a piece of wire around it because it couldn't stand up. But the Claws alien there needed a, you know, then you got, that was the big Queen. Now, she had her own metal stand, but even the smaller ones, unless they were crawlers, they didn't, you know, they didn't need stands and McFarlane stuff. Every one of those figures, yeah, they just need a stand. Here's a NECA, that was the Predator 2 I don't know if he's on a... Yes, he is. He's on a big Kaiser stand, okay? You can see that big loop around him, because him, too, would fall forward. He fell off my shelf a couple times, almost broke. There's a shelf over there with a bunch of stuff on it. So, once again, you can see what I'm using stands for. I think everybody gets the point. Just kind of showing a little tour, but how... Yeah, when you have all this stuff, and it's at a card, you know, and you collect, like, it's amazing. I don't know how you guys do it. How many of your figures fall? Let me know in the comments. And you can see, like I showed this is all my classics collection all around. And I'm pointing it out because it's so awesome to leave, sorry about the light, leave things in card, you know. It tells a story, it protects everything, they don't fall, you know. You don't lose weapons. And as soon as you start taking monsters out, reviewing them, or just collecting them, everything's an issue all of a sudden, you know. So, yeah, I love leaving things in card, but you just run out of room. And, yeah, then you got to start the maintenance just to have toys. These things too, yeah, okay, so there's McFarlane stuff. That's all in card in there. The Tortured Souls, again, never had an issue because they're in card. Okay, and jumping back to my filming area too. You see a lot of these figures in my Creature Wall of Fame, I call it. You know, I'll mix them up sometimes. But even a New Spawn Plague needed a Kaiser stand, movie He-Man. Kintaro from Mortal Kombat. Also, now this is a metal Kaiser stand, but I used that crotch piece off one of those plastic ones to hold him up because I couldn't get the loop. I didn't have a bigger loop go around his waist. This was a custom Army of the Dead guy made. Now this one, I'm pointing this out because this has a clear stand. See, it's a little different. So here's another stand too. That these work pretty cool, but they're a lot of work putting together, and they're just yeah, they're time consuming. You know, it's where this just comes as one piece. Now I could have used one of these on him, but I didn't want to scratch the paint job up. So it's something, too, you got to consider, too, if you're customizing figures, you know, where the clear stands aren't going to scratch stuff. Yeah, that giant, that's the new McFarlane Violator needed a stand, that dragon in the back. Everything needs a stand. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed this review or update on Kaiser Stands, and just helped you guys out with any information about what they are, how they work. You see most of a lot of my collection has them all, so maybe you guys have the same issues. I'll leave the link in the description. And yeah, I got 6 more in, so that means 6 more figures got to go on them. It's they work great. I love them. For the most part, they work for most figures, aside things I pointed out. Nothing's perfect, but I think they're great and they're important to have. You have a big 6, 7, 8-inch action figure collection. Just get these things to stand half the time. In my experience, maybe it's just me. But I appreciate everybody watching. And until next time, take care.